If you've never taken psychedelics before, you simply cannot comprehend them. Words fail, concepts fail, and any framework of understanding stops making sense. The psychedelic experience is so reality-shattering that at high doses, questioning your existence is just not optional. It's inevitable. And you have to wonder, why is it like that? What really happens during the psychedelic experience? The first time I took them, I could have not expected that so much heavenly bliss and well-being was even possible. I witnessed what I can only describe as a cosmic revelation that dismantled everything I thought I knew about reality. It was such a beautiful experience that it also destroyed all my nihilistical philosophical cynicism. Psychedelics aren't just interesting because they create colorful hallucinations or weird sensations. They're profound because they completely rewire your fundamental relationship to existence itself. The experience feels so authentic because they aren't merely hallucinations, in the dismissive sense of the word. They're showing you something about the nature of perception that ordinary consciousness actively hides. They alter how your awareness relates to physical reality at the most basic, fundamental level. Science wants to reduce this to just chemicals affecting neurons, and spiritual communities go to the other step and say that this proof of God consciousness that connects us all into this infinite space. But both miss the holistic or the entire picture of it all. So in this exploration, we are diving into why psychedelic experience feels so deeply meaningful, what it actually means to call something a hallucination, and how understanding this can guide you closer to what mystics have called enlightenment. People make the crucial mistake in how they interpret these psychedelic experiences. At least while you're in it, it's very common for your mind to think that the psychedelic experience is realer than normal reality, and that it is actually more meaningful than normal, ordinary human life. And then it's very easy to get confused and ungrounded, although this perception feels very, very real. And this gets you into very confusing territory when you've taken psychedelics and have these crazy experiences, because you can perceive to enter different dimensions, and your mind witnesses extraterrestrial beings, elves, or gods. Hours can appear like days, colors can be smelled, and you can actually sense that your objective reality starts to become like a subject experiencing itself. And when you return from this trip, the question haunts you. Was any of this real? Or was it all just in my mind? And here's the thing. It feels like you've entered a different place, a different mode of being that feels more authentic than everyday life. Like this feeling is real and it cannot be denied when you're in it. Anyone who hasn't had this experience can or might easily want to dismiss this, but it's just like once you've been there, you know. And it feels more real than ordinary reality. And it is not possible to then just write it off as not real. Because if we reduce it to just chemicals in the brain or a chemical reaction in the brain, well, we could easily dismiss your broken leg as just a chemical reaction, and your pain is just nothing else but a hallucination of the mind. That would make for quite a dismissive doctor. So it is important to take these experiences seriously and to actually investigate what do they mean for, neurochemistry, physics, and just overall metaphysical spiritual understanding of life. Psychedelic communities typically split into two camps. The Rationalists insist that all transpersonal experiences happen within the human mind. Even if you encounter what might seem like a godlike entity, it's never truly another entity, but all just inside your own imagination. The spiritualists tend to mystify these experiences, believing they're communicating with higher beings from other dimensions or universes. They see the mind as an antenna for universal consciousness, with the substance amplifying the signal. But no matter what you believe intellectually, when you're in the experience, it doesn't feel like a hallucination at all, and it is shockingly clear and lucid. when you perceive a godhood on psychedelics, you cannot really deny it. I mean, you can have an awful experience trying to deny it, but the sensation itself is so overwhelmingly true, or shines with such an obviousness that it's not possible to deny. And this is what makes it so incredibly stunning and awe-inspiring, because you enter these places from a position of clarity, not from a drug-filled sense of confusion. You feel actually more clear in your mind to a certain degree. I've always described psychedelics as reverse dreaming. When you wake up from a dream, you think, okay, this was just a dream, and now I'm in my real body, in real life. And psychedelics flip this. They make you feel like you're waking up from your life into actual reality, revealing that your entire life has been the dream all along. It's a complete mindfuck. And the first time I felt this, I was struck with profound curiosity. Why does it feel this way? How is this even possible? First, it helps to not get lost in superstition, fantasy, and delusion. Imagine taking a hefty dose of LSD and becoming convinced that angels are communicating with you. So what's actually happening? We don't suddenly just uncritically believe actual angels exist just because we've ingested some substances, right? So psychedelics are fundamentally not different from meditation. The key distinction is that reaching similar states through meditation requires hundreds, sometimes thousands of hours of practice. But psychedelics force you into deep states of meditation. And in a way, it's almost like cheating. The challenge is that on psychedelics, you likely haven't cultivated the skills to interpret what's really happening. And the biggest mistake psychonauts make all the time is focusing on the narrative content of the experience. We fixate on the story to extract meaning because we want to make sense of it, because it feels so cosmic and grand and so meaningful, yet it doesn't make sense that it would feel this way because we know we've ingested the substance. So this approach falls short because psychedelic insight can't be fully communicated through stories. Saying, for example, that I approached heaven's gates where angels welcomed me and then they transformed into elves, showing me a light sphere containing universal wisdom. And then I looked into this light sphere and I saw elephants flying and yada, yada, yada. The story really doesn't convey anything. It doesn't convey anything that matters. It just sounds like crazy talk because the person who hasn't gone through it, it just sounds like, well, what could this possibly mean? It's just imagination. It's like when you tell somebody a dream and it's kind of boring and sounds pointless because it was not really about the narrative of the dream anyway, that fascinated you so much about it. It's how you felt about the phenomenology of the experience. The significance isn't in the content, but in how your perceptual field shifted. It's about how you felt during these novel experiences and what new qualia you suddenly noticed. Because the reason you see angels or elves or geometric patterns has more to do with how your mind attempts to make sense of this extraordinarily new and intense forms of sensations. These visions are essentially energy sinks, or like energy containers. For example, you might be overwhelmed by a feeling of boundless love, so your mind generates angels to represent this feeling. What then results after a ton of different sensations your mind never has experienced before, well, it's an incredible complex experience with countless forms and hallucinations and patterns that just try to make sense of it all. But the underlying experience of it is what is actually real. And then it doesn't matter if we call it a hallucination or reality, because the experience is just factually true. And just like in ordinary life, the mind tries to create stories around these experiences. Like even in your day-to-day, you use a lot of storytelling, symbols, and concepts to analyze in your mind, to think and comprehend. And you do it very quickly and automatically, and you don't realize that so many thoughts that you have throughout the day are also completely false, completely delusionary. Psychedelics reveal how remarkably good we are as humans to lie with our minds, to immerse ourselves in storytellings about what matters to us, and to think that we really understand what it means to be us and what it means to be alive, than to see that this entire story you told about yourself was a lie, is very shocking to the sense of self. And that's why psychedelics feel like such spiritual experiences. The qualia, like the sensation of spirituality, this feeling of awe or witnessing some form of beauty, is actually nothing but the dissolution of your sense of self. All spiritual experiences are always some subconscious processing that dissolves your identity. And by this dissolution process, you suddenly notice that whatever you thought you were wasn't true. You can think about this too with dreams again. We believe that the stories in the dream make sense and are somewhat real, but they actually point to us or to our mind's incredible ability to simulate realities, to make incredibly sophisticated representations of something that is not real. And then when we wake up, it seems obvious that it was absurd. So why wouldn't we assume that whatever comes after our human life wouldn't reveal the same absurdity about this dream we are in right now? So you can observe that this happens in everyday life too. We believe our thoughts and ideas about ourselves, or ideas of the past and concept of the world, and we create intricate fantasies of meaning about all kinds of irrelevant things. Even when watching a movie and becoming emotionally invested in fictional characters, like, your mind is actively kind of lying to you. None of this really matters, right? You're deceiving yourself for your own entertainment. The drug just makes it obvious that you're doing this with all aspects of your life. Everything was a lie. The substance makes it just hilariously obvious. But this can be also quite scary and destabilizing. It is both the fuel of immense awe and beauty, and a lot of terror and fear. And it gets very bad when you start to believe in the narrative content of psychedelic hallucinations. When you believe that your hallucinations on psychedelics, like the narratives and content, are literally true, you get into very dangerous territory. You risk falling into a pit of delusions that will make you appear really crazy to normal people, because you start to believe in bizarre things. For example, I knew a woman who became convinced during a trip that cosmic parasites had invaded her brain. And now she firmly believes that these cosmic parasites are attempting to conquer Earth. And yeah, of course, this is what happens when you take hyper-realistic experiences at face value and believe that they are beyond your mind. Which, there we get into this weird question of what it really means to be beyond your mind or inside your mind. Because clearly there is a strong ability for delusions and a strong ability to not be living in accordance to truth. Like if you jump out of a balcony, you clearly die. There's nothing hallucinatory about this. But then on the other sense, a lot of ways you might relate to what it means to be a balcony or what it means to be on a balcony is very much a human fabrication. So as a general rule, experience everything fully, even the narratives, but don't become attached to them. This protects your mind from epistemological hand grenades. Epistemology is the theory of knowledge, like how can we really know something? It explores what is true, and psychedelics offer a profound window into this question. Imagine you've spent your entire life perceiving the world through a particular lens, like a lens with specific distortions, scratches, and like a color that filters your perception of what has been seen. When you look to this lens, you assume that this is just how the world looks like. This is just natural. This lens is yourself, your identity, beliefs, assumptions, and conditionings. What psychedelics do is they temporarily remove this lens. suddenly you see without those familiar distortions. You realize the scratches where, for example, personal traumas coloring everything. And the tint of the glass was your cultural programming. And the frame, your ego boundaries. And then on psychedelics, you just shatter the entire concept. You shatter the entire frame. So they reveal that this entire framing of the glass and the window already was a hallucination. Reality goes infinitely deep beyond this framing. Everything you've believed is in some way false. Everything you think you are is a construct made by the mind. All concepts and narratives in your daily life only matter because you're perceiving them to matter. You give them meaning by embodying them as an individual, as a person. Psychedelics dissolve the brain's ability to maintain its relationship to the personal self. For example, I remember laughing uncontrollably during one come-up because I suddenly realized that whenever I used the word society, like I was reflecting about society, living in a society, then I started to realize that the word society was such an elusive idea. Like I had absolutely no idea really what I was talking about or what I was meaning my entire lifetime when I said the word society, because it's an absolutely vast and abstract concept encompassing billions of people. Yet we casually use this word as if it maps onto something clearly definable. And this applies to all words. They are all imperfect representations of reality. And as you let go of the thinking mind and sink into pure experience, the empty nature of all concepts become blindingly obvious. There's nothing you can perceive that exists outside your own consciousness, outside your own mind. Everything you experience consists of physical reactions, conditions interacting to generate what we call objects, like the screen, or vibrations creating my voice. The sound here only emerges because your eardrums connect with the sound waves. Like there's an intersection happening. So the question now is, to what or to whom do these sensations appear? Are sensations like sound real, or is also sound just another form of hallucination? Psychedelics immerse you completely in raw sensations while removing the part of you that normally interprets it. Meditation does the same thing too, really. And the deeper you sink into pure sensation, the more you shed rigid beliefs about yourself that were holding you back. You're no longer a person having thoughts, you're simply awareness, pure sensation. You realize that everything that has ever happened to you was actually happening to no one at all. Only awareness itself starts to remain, shining through experience. And this process, or like this dissolution into experience, what it often causes a lot of emotions to come up. A lot of both positive and negative emotions. And as long as you let these emotions or sensations flow, it becomes a very beautiful and blissful experience, because consciousness is actually harmonizing around them, like almost in like a symmetric way. But the moment you have something you don't want to feel and you pull back, you don't want to have this experience, well, it's like you want to cling to your identity. You want to cling to the sense of self and not dissolve in this emptiness. And it's this resistance of not letting it happen that can make psychedelics horrible experiences. This is where bad trips come in. And bad trips are pretty much always caused by some ego misidentification and the holding on to something that scares you. And it's always better, always, to simply let go of all sense of control and all sense of identity. Because there was no control anyway. They were all just a ton of sensations bouncing around in this weird soup of space and time. So when you really let go and completely let into the experience, and this is true for real life or like for the sober state too, creating distinctions becomes like kind of impossible, at least like on an awareness level. So up and down, dead or alive, being and non-being, these words stop to mean anything. The part of the mind that judges aspects of experience just disappears. Everything is seen as equally real and unreal. Existence simply is. This is what happens when the sense of self dissolves and merges with experience. Because there was never really any separation there. The separation was imagined. There are countless layers to this process, which is why also defining ego death is so challenging. There are just really basically infinite ways to experience it. It's common that as you get more absorbed into the trip, a small voice inside might become terrified because of it. It might want to panic and completely rebel against it. Usually when this happens, you're approaching ego death, but you're rejecting it because you're scared of all of this emptiness. But to dissolve into infinite experience is really what death is. It's the natural process of dissolution. Death isn't a permanent state, but simply the absence of self. Experience transcends all perceptions of form. This creates this epistemological barrier for material thinkers. Like the more you believe that everything is just physical and material life and there's nothing beyond that, often the harder it can be to let go, because you really are attached to so fundamental beliefs in how you see reality. And to let these concepts go is what makes these experiences so challenging sometimes. But once you let them go, it's what also makes them so intensely beautiful and mesmerizing. The very concept of non-existence or existence becomes kind of logically incoherent, because there's no logic that can impose itself onto the experience. The experience just speaks for itself. And when you go really deep, what you'll see is that non-existence is already the case. There's only empty space from which everything emerges. And from this empty space, infinite potential and creativity emerge. That's why the craziest things are possible in this world. The most absurd aspects of reality suddenly come to life. And you can see that this absurdity is not only there when you see elves and angels on DMT, but everything is absurd. The ability to record this video and you to hear me talk about psychedelics on the internet, there's so much going on here. Every moment, so much things are clashing that are just absolutely hilariously absurd. And I think a lot of this awe and wonder is what actually moves people to psychedelics, because they see that there's something there, something to be explored beyond the personal self. And psychedelics let you witness this infinitely directly, not conceptually, but in a state of extreme presence. When seconds stretch into days, you realize there's nothing in your perception that's fundamentally more real than anything else. Like, I remember times where I completely destroyed the idea of time and space, and I felt like I was forever in this space. And it is so extreme that it is really impossible to talk about it with anybody who hasn't had this experience, because you will always look like you're exaggerating. It really doesn't matter what it is. It will always look like exaggeration, because it's just so incredible. Because what you're actually saying to another person is that it's all an illusion. It's all fabrication. Reality is groundless. So the more willing you are to move towards this groundlessness, the closer you will actually be to truth. And if you do so without creating stories or narratives around it, the closer you come to what teachers, spiritual traditions have always termed enlightenment, where these deep, deep, profound, blissful states that you can find in psychedelics become embodied and personal and real in your day-to-day life. So meditation does the same thing, but psychedelics accelerate this process dramatically. They can confront you with a lot of fear and terror, the same that deep meditation also can. And deep meditation can also go into jhanic states, or samadhi states, which psychedelics do as well. It's just simply this feeling of, oh, So when I let go of the sense of self, when I let go of all of these barriers that I've constructed, what reveals to me is that reality is actually very beautiful. It's actually blissful, not only as some sort of perception or idea in the brain, but no. Physical reality has the nature of being beautiful. And I think we get hints of that when we get into like fascinations about mathematics or physics or symmetries, for example. There's so much about reality that actually has almost a type of inherent beauty to it. Psychedelics are just a wrecking ball to get there. Like it's a wrecking ball to the ego, really. And meditations offer a more gentler approach and is, I think, quite essential for integrating these insights into just daily life. I've come to think of meditation as if being sober were a psychedelic drug. Yeah. And like psychedelics themselves, its power, like from the power of meditation, can only really be underestimated. So whenever you are on crazy trips and you suddenly see intergalactical gods speaking to you, in a way you are speaking to yourself. The qualia or the sensation of otherness has to be an imagination, because everything at the end of the day comes down to being one and the same. But this does not mean that on some other level you might actually create some sort of split awareness in your system, where you really create the sense of otherness and therefore create the perception of some split consciousness in your mind. And the fact that these consciousness can feel like beings that are so beyond you and so other than you, I think is a good hint of what reality is capable of. Like I alluded at another part in this video, the suffering or the bad trip experience comes from resisting the experience, from not accepting the emptiness and dissolution of the state. But this is not exclusive to psychedelics at all. This is something you're confronting every second of your life and determines how well you feel just being yourself. So to find deeper peace in yourself, I really recommend you watch this video next.